Hello, everyone, and welcome to July's Fic Night. Um, I apologize for being almost 20 minutes late. It has been a wild week, which I will not go into the details of. But anyway, we are here now, most importantly, and we are here to hear, of course, the live reading of this month's Fic Night winner. This month is actually our first back-to-back winner by Ava, aka Just a Willow Tree. And it's featuring her story Red Luck, which was written for one of the prefects challenges back on the Harry Potter Fanfic Talk, aka HPFT forum challenge. Was the Holiday and Diversity Challenge, which took place toward the tail end of 2017. It actually placed second place in that challenge and was actually a finalist for one of our site-wide awards, the Frogs, in the Best Family and Friendship category, where it got third place. I have personally already read the story even before I saw that it was a winner for Fic Night, and was really excited to be able to share it with everybody again, particularly anybody who has not read it. As you will hear, I think it's an absolutely incredible story. And so that gas aside, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. This is, again, Red Luck by Just a Willow Tree. I never realized how much I loved the scent of peppermint until it was 3 days till Christmas break, and Rose still hadn't asked me to visit her family. That night, we sleepily curled around each other in our secret library alcove, my long black hair pooling by her fiery red. I pressed my lips against her neck and mumbled, I love how you always smell like peppermint. I'm always going to associate Christmas with you. Flattery never hurt anyone, especially if it was true. Rose took a few moments to process my words. You never say things like that without an ulterior motive. At this point in our relationship, I should have realized that Rose would be suspicious of typical relationship cliches, even if what I said was really cute. She probably thought it was an attempt at ingratiation, which it sort of was, but all I wanted was to be introduced to her family on her own terms. This was a last-ditch attempt to remind her that I was her girlfriend, that the holidays were fast approaching, and that if she ever thought about, I don't know, bringing her girlfriend home, now was the time to ask. Anyway, wasn't it the Gryffindors who were supposed to be headstrong and forward? Yeah, if you consider trying to make you happy an ulterior motive, I said, smiling up at her. You're so full of it, she said. But even in the dimness of our alcove, I saw the blush across her freckles. I decided that even if she didn't invite her year-long girlfriend to Christmas, seeing her so flustered was a beneficial side effect of my sweet talking. It occurred to me on the day we left Hogwarts that perhaps Rose had wanted me to ask her, but my family never did anything special for Christmas, while I knew the Weasleys basically blew up their house every year during the holidays. Either way, it wouldn't do to have Rose think that I didn't want to spend my holidays with her. At the bustling train station, right as she saw her parents and family, I took her hand and said, Come visit me during Chinese New Year. In a few months? Why are you asking this now? She said with a great deal of bravado, though her telltale flush whispered an entirely different mood. Of course I will. And next year we'll still be together, yeah? And the year after that. But anyway, Anne will be 7th years, so come over to the Burrow next year with me? Yes, of course. A wide smile spread across my face. She wished for us to be together next year and the year after, and she clearly regretted not following through on her Gryffindor gut and asking me to come home with her this Christmas. I could tell she was feeling guilty about that. An urge rose up in me to reassure her, but Rose was the type of person who needed to apologize without any outside influence. Otherwise, the guilt would plague her for years. A few heartbeats later, she let out a sigh and said, We've been dating for almost a year now, and I still thought you didn't like me enough to ask me to visit your family, so I was being really, really petty. I'm sorry." I gave her a smile. She returned it hesitantly. "It's okay. Just make sure to ask me to all the family parties from now on," I said. "Now go on and have a beautiful time with your family." Instead of bounding away as I expected, Rose pressed a quick kiss to my cheek, far enough from my lips for people around us to misconstrue it as platonic, though when have kisses ever been platonic? But close enough for my stomach to flutter like it always did when we kissed. "Bye for now, Chloe," she said. "Sorry again. We'll have so much fun with my family next year, and I'm looking forward to meeting yours in February. I'll love your mom. I know it. Owl me any photos you take." I watched as she gave me one last beatific smile before running to her family, her wild, animated red hair flying behind her, and crossed my fingers. Chloe Zhao! As soon as Rose caught a glimpse of me when we arrived at Hogwarts, she tackled me. Any breath that remained from seeing her sparkling, mischievous eyes again after a 3-week separation was immediately crushed out of my system. She gave me one of her wide smiles before leaning in to kiss me. Students bustled into the great hall around us, the rustle of their robes and the murmur of their voices reaching our ears. "You two," said Albus, but he had on one of those smiles, the one that everyone gets when they see dreamy couples in public. At least for other people. That sort of thing never happened to me. I always thought public displays of affection were too embarrassing on the second-hand level, and that private relationships should be kept private. But greeting a girlfriend after a holiday apart was one of the occasions I was willing to make an exception for, especially since Rose looked so happy. For the very first time, I was granted access to the Gryffindor girls' dormitories. Walking up the stairs had been a treacherous business. I could practically hear its hum of suspicion as it debated whether a Slytherin lesbian was qualified to enter the girls' dormitory. Finally, it seemed to set aside its discrimination and appeared to decide that a girl was a girl. "Thanks, dickhead," I muttered as its murderous quiver ceased, and I made it up peacefully. The Gryffindor dormitories were so vibrant. Slashes of strong, bright reds from the drapes, and canopies were mellowed out by burgundies and deep golds. The walls by each bed were decorated top to bottom with overly excited pictures and sports posters. Amidst the silence of the room, the colors practically roared in my face. I was fairly certain that red was permanently ingrained into my brain. "Cozy," was what I said. It wasn't false. If Rose and I could cuddle here every night instead of the library alcove, our hearts and toes would certainly be warmer. A loud snort came unabashedly from Rose as she stalked around the empty dormitory, gathering her necessary items. She picked up a few undergarments and pants from behind Alex's bed, saying, "You hate it. Too much noise for your adorable introvertedness." I crawled onto her bed. I knew it was hers, the massive collage of her pictures on the wall featuring her family, friends, and girlfriend. Me gave it away. All the blankets were puffy and soft. Everything in the Slytherin dorms was significantly less comfortable. Was Hogwarts allowed to discriminate like this? "Let's play a game," said Rose suddenly, dropping all of her clothes back on the floor where they came from. "You're here anyway." "Weren't you packing?" I eyed the pile of clothes. "Do you need help?" "I don't need help," said Rose, flapping a hand dismissively at her unfinished packing. She leapt across the room in 2 large bounds and hurled herself onto the bed, bouncing me 2 feet into the air. An unintentional shriek escaped my lips as my balance was shaken and I toppled on top of her. Smiling, I pressed a quick kiss to her lips, sitting up before becoming too intoxicated with her peppermint scent. "So what's the game? Is it competitive?" I asked, my mind already wiring itself into victory mode. Gryffindors possessed endless energy and house pride. Ravenclaws knew the weirdest pieces of trivia, some of which miraculously helped them out in certain things. Hufflepuffs were frighteningly relentless and consistent in everything they did. Slytherins, though, we knew how to win things. My premature celebratory haze promptly vanished as soon as Red smiled smugly and said, "Blanket worm races!" A few minutes later, I found myself lying disgruntled on the floor, mummified in one of the thick, restrictive blankets I had falsely classified as comforting. Rose was cackling at my predicament from her victorious perch by the doorway of the bathroom. Normally, I didn't scowl. My face was good at being inexpressive in embarrassing situations. Today, however, the humiliation was too great. I scowled. After watching Rose, wrapped up securely in blankets, squirm her way to the bathroom in a matter of seconds, I'd grown overconfident. 2 miserable attempts later, I came to an undeniable and disheartening conclusion. Blanket worm races were simply not events that Slytherins could possibly win at. There was no intelligence or strategy involved, only crude, undignified wriggling. By the time I get myself out of this, you'd better be finished packing. Otherwise, I'll leave you here, I said. Nerves for the first meeting between Rose and my family were making me slightly grumpy. If we don't get there by sundown, I'll know who to blame. You won't do that, said Rose, kneeling down until her long hair, vibrant and lively like the rest of her dormitory, just brushed the tip of my nose. You love me too much. I sneezed. My mother's home was beautiful. It had always been beautiful, but coming home after long, long months spent away from my family only increased its worth to me. She had gone to a magical school in the cloud-tipped mountains of China, in the province of Shandong. Upon completing her education, she moved to England as an immigrant. She was a muggle-born and brilliant. All my life, she raised me, and later my baby sister, on values that remained integral to me throughout my journey. She also held the traditional Chinese view that people like me are unnatural, which is why I never told her. Whoa, breathed Rose after we'd both recovered from the unsympathetic thumping of the port key, specifically set up by Professor McGonagall for us. She stared at my home from where we were standing. We were in a field of waist-high golden grass. Gently, the breeze brushed the tall stalks to and fro until the grass rippled and shimmered like a sea of amber. The expanse seemed to go on forever. Only the silhouettes of mountains and forests in the distance signified an end. And in the middle of the field, about a quarter of a kilometer away from us, was my mother's cottage. A small, quaint thing, made of stone, with ivy shyly creeping around it. Even from such a distance, I could see the telltale red banners and signs on the door that marked wishes for fortune and prosperity. I made a quick wish for luck as well, before turning to Rose and holding out my hand. She took it, her normally pale skin somewhat rosy from the excitement of meeting my mother. I should warn you about a few things, I said as we began the slow trek to the cottage. There were things I never told her at Hogwarts, mostly because I'd been terrified that she would be scared away from coming with me. During Chinese New Year, extended families gather for the first time since the last holiday, or perhaps even longer than that. Oh, so like my extended family. No, you don't understand, I pressed, brushing my hand against the tall grass to calm myself a little. When I say extended family, I mean extended family. I'm talking about my mother's cousin's mother-in-law's son's wife's second cousin, thrice removed's dog. My mom did everything she could this year to bring every family member she could think of. It will be loud. It will be rowdy. It may even become a drunken mess, especially among my mom's generation. There will be many grandmothers and grandfathers shouting at each other in rapid-fire Mandarin to get out of the kitchen. And then there will be mothers and fathers desperately trying to kick all of them out of the kitchen. Because even the thought of the elderly working will make them break out in hives, and there will be so much food. This sounds like the opposite of a problem, said Rose, smiling at me. The striking color of her hair was embraced by the sun and the grass, and the fact that she looked so beautiful made everything worse. I hesitated, feeling the guilt roll in my stomach. We can't use magic, I began, and we can't tell them we're dating. Rose was furious with me. She was furious with me, and she still managed to greet each of my family members with grace on our way up the stairs to the room, despite them mostly not speaking English. Judging by their kindly smiles, they all loved her. Every single relative wanted to stop and chat with her, and I continually had to reassure them in Mandarin that they would all get to meet her properly later, though I wasn't sure how true that was at this point. I would introduce my sister to her later. My mother was out gathering the last of my extended family through the use of portkey. Secrecy limitations were different in mainland China than in Europe. All family members were allowed to know that there was magic in the family, and to keep them silent, they were required to be brought to the magical government to take a binding oath. However, the use of magic in front of them was still discouraged, so that they didn't grow accustomed to it. As soon as the door shut behind me, Rose flicked her wand in sharp, angry movements and silently cast a silencing charm on the door. You couldn't tell me that you had a family of homophobes before we left, she said, her voice raising. Are you kidding me? So I'm going to be introduced to your mother, not as your girlfriend, but as what? Good friend, the one you kiss on a regular basis? I stood there, my back pressed against the cold wood of the door. I let her yell at me because I knew that omitting information to get her here was selfish. That was the easy part. So how was I supposed to fix this? Normally, I could usually weave my way out of situations, but judging by the furious flush on her cheeks and the film of angry tears in her eyes, she was so upset. And I did that. I I began before an alarmingly dull thud shook the door behind me. I had a feeling I knew who that was. Carefully opening the door a crack and peeking outside, I saw nothing at eye level. A quick glance downward confirmed my suspicions. My baby sister was sitting on the floor, her thick tufts of black hair poking in all directions from her run in with the door. She looked confused. Just because she walked through a wall that one time, she was now convinced of her ability to turn into an intangible spirit at will. Thank goodness for her magically enhanced head, otherwise she would have knocked herself silly at this point. Sighing, I opened the door fully and scooped her up, quickly bringing her into my room before any relatives decided an open door was an invitation. I shut the door securely, locked it, and turned around to see Rose looking more subdued. Her gaze hardened again slightly when she looked at me. We're going to resolve this inability of yours to tell the truth soon, her eyes said. But your sister is cute, so we'll deal with that first. And then softened upon looking at my sister. My sister wasn't really a baby. She was 4 years old, but because she was so much tinier than everyone else, all my relatives in older generations just called her Yao Bei. What's her name? Rose asked, sitting down on the plain white covers of one bed. There were two beds, both covered in a boring blanket in this boring white room. Clearly, my mom did not make too much of an effort for me. Normally, I would share with my little sister, but because I had a guest around this time, my mom thought it would be better for me to stay in the same guest room. What's your name, Meme? I asked my sister, giving her a quick squeeze. I sat down in the unoccupied bed. Her chubby little cheeks puffed out even further as she considered the answer. Grace, she finally said, her adorable monolid eyes crossing with the effort. Good job, I told her, suppressing a smile. She didn't like it whenever family members smiled at her. She always thought we were laughing at her, which was true, but still ridiculously sensitive of her. Strangers smiling at her were fine, though. She was a bit of a weird one. I'm Rose, said Rose, sticking out two fingers, or the maximum number of fingers Grace could grasp properly for her to shake. After a suspicious glance, Grace shook. She's my girlfriend, I told my squishy little sister quite casually. Rose's eyebrows raised slightly as she started. What? I thought you told me. Grace knows everything about me, don't you, Mei? I kissed her cheek. My Gigi is a lesbian. She's very gay, said Grace seriously. And for some reason, she's good at keeping secrets. Whenever my mother asks her to spy on me, Grace will just follow me around for the day and then proceed to not actually tell my mom anything. She's very strange. Your mom spies on you? Not literally, she just wants to know if I'm actually doing work or not instead of playing around in our room. Grace not so gently shoved at my arms and wriggled to escape my embrace. The moment I released her, she toppled to the ground, righted herself, and crawled into Rose's lap. Little traitor. This summer, I definitely would be sharing any of my Hogwarts treats with her. She's so cute, said Rose, looking happier, and occupied herself with entertaining my love-spoiled sister. I'll tell my mom we're dating when we meet her tomorrow, I whispered. The night was silent. Our blankets were warm from an hour in bed. Neither of us were sleeping. An afternoon of legal traveling on Saturday meant that we only had Sunday to spend with my family, so I wanted to make the most of it, especially since I did, well, lie. Rose let out a sigh, her blankets rustling as she rolled over to face me. No, that's okay, she murmured sleepily. You were really wrong to lie to me. As in, you were seriously wrong, and I'm still not quite over it, if you couldn't tell. But to want to protect yourself from a homophobic family is understandable. I'd hate for you to lose them, even if they hold stupid beliefs. An hour of thinking had led me to the decision to come out to my mother. Not the rest of my family, just because they would probably find out eventually. The Chinese gossip mill is scarily efficient, and so it didn't matter so much. I was thinking about it. I think a Gryffindor like you would obviously be scared to come out to your parents if you know about their beliefs, but you'd want the results. You'd want to know how they'd act if their very own daughter was one of them. And so you would do it, despite that fear. But I want people I love to think the best of me, and even if their beliefs are horrible and prejudiced and wrong, I'm someone who would let them be that way if it meant they would love me. After my lies today, though, I think I should be a little braver, like a Gryffindor, just for today. Silence. Then, this might be the very first time you've ever positively highlighted Gryffindor traits. Shut up, I laughed, then sighed a long breath. I'm sorry for lying and for bringing you to a place that might not be entirely safe for you. It's still not okay, but I forgive you. Her candor relaxed me, and I drifted off to sleep. I awoke to the smell of abalone porridge, and of baozi filled with pork and lettuce, and of noodles and beef broth. Leaping out of bed, I skipped to the door in my pajamas before realizing that Rose had already left. Oh, goodness. My little sister was still sleeping. She was basically a human koala, so I went downstairs without her. The sight that greeted me in the spacious dining room should not have been a surprise, yet it was anyway. Rose was sandwiched between my grandparents on my mother's side, her bright hair sticking out like a sore thumb amidst all the black, and in the case of my grandparents, gray with white streaks. Across from her were my many, many aunts and uncles, all laughing at whatever she was saying, despite likely not understanding a word. In the kitchen, joking around as they prepared the food, were a number of my cousins, all considerably older than me. Seeing them enjoy each other's company, even with the language barrier, warmed my heart. I stepped forward, greeting all my relatives with a huge smile. For many of them, it had been years since they'd seen me, so I embraced the cheek cupping, growth marveling, beauty complimenting ritual universal to all grandparents and long distance relatives. It was actually a joy to be able to see so many family members together, especially since most of them lived in China. My father worked in China, but his family was here. They then took their turn clustering around me, showering me with endless love and praises and wishes until my heart was fit to burst. Hi, Rose, I said. smiling at her once the onslaught of affection was over. She scooted over a little in her seat, and I sat down, finally seeing what had been amusing my relative so much. Rose had been attempting to master the art of chopsticks. As a result, her food lay in tatters on her plate. My maternal grandmother made her way to the kitchen, where my cousins had 50 different pots and pans going at the same time. Quickly standing from my shared seat, I chased after her and gently pulled her arm. Lao Lao, it's just the morning. Leave the cooking to them for once, I cajoled in Mandarin. Do you know where my mom is? She should be waking up soon, said my grandmother warmly, patting my hand on her arm. Okay, okay, I'm going. Breakfast was a happy affair. Red envelopes were handed to all of my cousins, as well as Rose and me, and steaming plates were passed around. My grandmother braided Rose's long, wavy hair, as Rose finally learned the basics of chopsticks. Then my hair was braided, as my family laughed themselves silly over Rose's exaggerated antics. Conversations all around us were in rapid-fire Mandarin, so I translated the best I could for Rose, and she always expressed amusement at the jokes, albeit a few minutes late. All throughout the meal, I caught whiffs of peppermint. Once the chatter and energy levels were decreasing a bit, my mum came down, dressed in one of her trademark flower print dresses. In her arms, she carried Grace, who looked grumpy to be here. Mama, I said immediately, standing from my shared seat with Rose and giving my mum a tight hug. Grace, feeling left out, harumphed, about as well as a 4-year-old could manage it. Behind me, Rose stepped up boldly, lifting her head high and giving my mother a look of complete and utter confidence. My mother mostly just looked confused at the bold statement of Rose's body language, but smiled warmly at her. I've heard a lot about you, she said in fluent but accented English. Chloe talks about you all the time. Mama, can I talk to you? I said in Mandarin, nerves beginning to overtake the joy from seeing my mum. Maybe in a different room? Sure, love, she said, putting Grace down and gently pushing her towards the rest of our family. We made our way into a quiet study, where I linked arms with Rose and took a deep breath, speaking English for the sake of Rose. So, Rose isn't my friend, I said. My mother furrowed her brows, and I continued. She's my girlfriend. We've been dating for just over a year now. My mother placed a hand on the study's desk. Sorry, what? Rose unlinked our arms and placed my hand in hers, giving me comfort. This wasn't going well. I knew it wasn't going to go well. My mother had made it clear in every instance that she would not support gay marriage, would not support gay couples, would not support legislation helping them. I like girls, Mama, and only girls. Perhaps in her head she was thinking of all the times she had discussed this, and was now rewriting it to fit the current story. That every time she spoke about gay children, she was speaking of her own daughter. I watched her as she struggled to align the stereotypes with how she saw me. Maybe we can discuss this later, she said finally, her English becoming halting as her emotions clouded her brain. On a day that's not Chinese New Year. No, let's discuss this now, I said, drawing on all my practice as a member of Slytherin House to speak my way through this. Mama, I'm the same person. Every time you spoke about how it was unnatural, your perfectly natural daughter was sitting there in front of you, listening. But now you find out that I'm not perfectly natural, despite the lack of signs that were supposed to warn you about this. There's nothing different. Whatever difference you see, you're making it up. I'm the same. I still wake up no later than 9 a.m. in the mornings, no matter how late I go to bed. I still dream of healing. I still enjoy healthy brown rice over your supposedly better tasting white rice. I still love Grace. I still love you. I'll always still love you, even after the prejudiced things you've said. So I hope you'll be able to think about this on an open mind. Because if you can, I will be the happiest girl in the world. A proud and possibly consoling squeeze from Rose. Wait a second, Chloe, said my mother. She looked distraught, and my heart leadened. I think I need time to think about this. A lot of time. This is so shocking for me. Maybe it wouldn't have been so shocking if you'd opened your mind from the beginning. Instead of believing all the stigma against it in China, I said, please try harder. Please. I hoped for a hug from her, or at least some form of contact, but she stood still. My heart hurt, but it wasn't the end. I turned with Rose to leave the study. Chloe, love, said my mother just before we left. I still love you. Truly. It will just take time. Rose led me out. Instead of returning to the breakfast table, we decided to meander outside, where the morning sun was higher and the sky was clear. The wind played with the short strands of our hair that escaped my grandmother's braiding. Its chilliness took some of the sting off my interaction with my mother. We lay in the grass, staring at the sky, had been, for hours. I think it will be okay, said Rose finally, her fingers brushing against mine. For a homophobe, she was less horrible than usual. You think so? Yeah. A few moments, a few heartbeats, a few sighs later, we returned to the cottage, hand in hand. It was, after all, Chinese New Year. So, once again, for anybody who is just joining us or came in the middle of the story, this story was Red Luck, written by Ava, aka Just a Willow Tree, from our forum community on Harry Potter Fanfic Talk, aka hpfanfictalk.com. And it was written for the Holiday and Diversity Prompt challenge that was hosted on our forums back at the tail end of 2017 by a group of members who have kind of our member leaders on our website. And in true Harry Potter fashion, they're known as the prefects. It got second place in that challenge, and it also got third place as a finalist in our whole site-wide awards, which basically take into account all of the stories written in 2017 that are called the Frogs in the Best Friendship and Family category. We had Ava with us last time because, like I was saying before, he is our first back-to-back Fic Night. I never know what to call this exactly. Fic Night winner, I guess we'll say. But this time, we do not have to interact through the chat, so we just get to hear straight from Ava herself. Ava, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
Awesome. So the first thing that struck me about this story, from a writing perspective anyway, was the description. It was like every scene was totally immersed in it. You gave life to places that are, at least in my mind anyway, no matter how they're set up or described in canon by J.K. Rowling, you give life to places like the Gryffindor girls' dormitory, and painted just an absolutely beautiful picture that I could clearly imagine in my mind of where they land with this portkey to go meet Chloe's family. How do you do it?
I don't know. So this was like the first fic that I put up on the archives, and so I was trying to include a little bit of everything. So I was just trying my best to put description in there, and I'm glad it worked out. But it was like my first fic, and I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So I'm just happy to hear that it sounded nice.
Well, I would say it sounded more than nice. It read very awesome to me, because, like I was saying, again, for anybody who missed the beginning of the broadcast due to me being late, um, this story is one that, like, the minute that I saw Ava post up in the thread for consideration, it's a story that just jumped out at me. I was like, I remember that story. Um,
Thank
and
you.
I don't read as many stories as I want to or used to. But when a story jumps out at me, I know when I come back to an Fic Night that it's just going to be an awesome thing to share with the community. And you should definitely be psyched up and proud of description. I might be a little biased because I consider myself terrible at description, but I don't think so. um, the next question obviously has to focus on the characters who are
Yes.
so critical to this story. How did you kind of come up with the personalities that were going to be at play for each of them?
Okay, so with Chloe, she was actually inspired a bit by my sister and me. Um, and I don't want to like talk too openly right now because my family is still in the house, but it was like her experiences are like similar to how I feel and how I'm sure my sister feels a lot of the time. And and so like and also I kind of based her on like traditional Chinese values, except like she's obviously not as conservative as her mom, and unfortunately, in Chinese culture, there's a lot of homophobia going on. So anyway, I don't know. Chloe was just based on my sister and I, and as for Rose, she was just to be honest, she was just kind of. I was imagining which type of person I would like to date, and I just thought of Rose. So that's just kind of how I came up with their personalities.
Fair enough. Touching on one thing there. I thought it was a really interesting touch, even though it was kind of like a tiny aspect of the whole story. Um, the way magic is treated differently in China, and like um, the government
Uh,
process that goes into everything. How did you make the connection between sort of the openness, more openness with magic, but the more kind of like, I guess, overt demands of the Muggle government?
um, well, I sort of thought about okay, well, in China, family is super important, and and actually, everyone just kind of sort of lives together, especially if you live in the smaller towns, but even in like the big cities, the extended families can live together. And so I'd imagine it'd be really, really difficult to keep magic a secret from the people in your family who like aren't your parents and siblings and stuff. So I was like given like the culture difference, I thought that the laws would also be different to sort of reflect that. Yeah. So that's what I
Well,
was thinking.
well, I thought it was an excellent fusion of those two things. Obviously, um, I'm an outsider to Chinese culture, but from what little I know and from what you've said, it sounds like a very well done. Even if it was like this tiny snippet, I thought it fit really well. To kind of the comparison that you made between been too long a week for me to keep my thoughts together. but but I thought it made a really nice point, I guess, to switch over from the Hogwarts culture where
Mhm.
everything had been comfortable and they were both kind of like at ease um, in that environment, and in their relationship in that environment. And it, if I'm remembering correctly, was kind of like right there at the trigger point, that being described when things switch over to a culture that's totally foreign to Rose,
Yeah.
and not welcoming to their relationship.
Mhm.
So I thought that was a really cool inflection point, as
Thank
well
you.
as being creative, just with the differing societies and how they would treat magic and everything.
Mhm.
Uh, as far as let's say futures, for Rose and Chloe, are we going to get an opportunity to see them more in the future? And you can feel free to beat me in the head if you've already posted this to the archives and I'm way behind on reading.
No, I haven't written anything else featuring them, but it's funny you mention it because I'm actually writing a one shot. It's not centered around Rose and Chloe's relationship. It's actually like just talking about Rose's friend group from before she actually started dating Chloe, but like they're the same characters. And I'm writing them kind of again. So I don't know. I'm excited. We'll see if that goes up anytime soon.
So is it, even though it's Rose's friend group, from her interactions in the story, is it sort of like a prequel kind of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually written for Shreya's squad challenge. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
so that's what inspired it. So we'll see.
I was not bold enough to take the dive on that particular challenge. I'm I'm kind of a lone wolf, so the whole squad idea I think left me behind with my mock trial team in college.
Uh, yeah, I've never written like a squad before, so I don't know how it'll go.
Yeah, it's that's one of those things that's definitely, even personal experience aside, I have grown to be so dialogue-y when I get like more than two characters in a room. And so that's a big challenge for me. But
Yeah.
now I'm sort of dragging us off track, so I apologize for that. Um, um, how soon would you say that you viewed any kind of sort of, I guess, evolution or decision by Chloe's mom about Chloe coming out as happening?
Oh, okay, so I think it would take her a while. Like, I think by the end of it all, it's gonna be fairly positive outcome. Like, she's gonna support Chloe and whoever she chooses to marry. But I think like the process getting there, Chloe's still gonna feel really upset, like the same way she did after she just came out to her mom, because I feel like her mom's going to either keep forgetting or just to pretend that the conversation never happened, or just sort of, or at least like talk about anything other than the fact that Chloe is gay. So it's gonna take a really long time for her mom to adjust. I think. I don't know like precise timeline, but it's gonna be a while.
Well, I can, from the way that you I think adeptly wrote that character as well. I think that makes absolute sense.
Mhm.
Would to step away, but before we come back a little bit to that, people in the chat right now are, or a while ago, when I should have been looking at the chat, were excited about the little sister Grace. How did you write a toddler? Because that's a challenge.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I am kind of obsessed with babies and I really like children and I have two younger sisters and they're not babies anymore, but um I just really love little children. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, for me it's sort of easy to write them because they're like cute and dumb. And it's just, I don't know, maybe it's because I relate to being dumb at some points, but I don't know, it just comes out fairly easily writing. Like writing Grace was the easiest part of the entire one shot. So I'm that's not super helpful, but I don't know. Surround yourself with children, I guess.
Well, you have a gift because I have a 7-year-old son, and I don't even want to think about writing a toddler. To be honest with you, maybe it's lasting trauma. I don't know, but yeah, I thought she was really well written, as well as the folks in the chat. Um, One thing to jump back to, having thrown a bone to the folks in the chat, who are doing a great job of joining in with us and really, giving praise to your story as well if you're not watching it simultaneously, is the actual coming out scene. Um, how did you write that?
Um, okay, so for that one, I was sort of thinking about my own family and just sort of like imagining what would probably be the best case scenario for that. And I think that's the same way in a lot of families. Like I didn't want to write like a coming out story where the children were just immediately disowned, you know, like that sort of extreme dramatic sort of reaction. Because I feel like the majority of us would just like sort of be met with like this lukewarm sort of response from our parents. And so that's what I wanted to write about this time in this fic.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I thought it was incredibly written, and I thought it also spoke to so many things, culturally, not just, in China, but kind of worldwide,
Mhm.
issues, particularly, with relation to gay rights, and discriminatory, even if it's, dying down some places, from an outright legal perspective, just the prejudices that people
Yeah.
still have, um, that were particularly baked into, um, and you can't really call it a monologue exactly, but when, Chloe's really imploring her mom to understand her, um, and I think most people would agree. I hope that that was one of the most striking parts of the piece, um,
Yay. Thank you.
and and so I it does not look like, we have any additional questions from the chat, and nobody is blowing me up on Twitter other than our wonderful friend Deanna is apparently watching this on like a straight up actual TV. So she's not joking about taking her Fic Night to the next level. But is there anything else that you want to share with viewers, who are with us now or will watch Fic Night later, about the story, about the drive behind the story, or about the process of it?
Um, I can't really think of anything else because you covered things so well. But I guess I just want to thank everyone who, you know, left kind comments about it because it really It really made me happy, and it really made me want to keep writing. So thank you guys.
Well, it was absolutely 100% deserved. I think I've said this before to people, and hopefully I will remember to that I've said it before, but I am hopefully going to go back and leave a review later as well, because I went in there, and when I opened up the story, I just went and looked at the reviews, and I was like, I feel like I reviewed this because I know I read it before. But as with a number of Fic Night and Fic Night winners, it's been like, no, Kevin, you read this and didn't review it like it should. So hopefully I will remember to do that, since I've got one more day of the weekend. But all the praise, absolutely deserved. An incredible
Thank you.
story. And thank you so much on your end for being with us again.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting.
All right, guys. So without further ado, I will bid you farewell and call to a close the July edition of Fic Night. If you haven't read Red Luck, if you're watching now or you watch later, there's a link in the description below the video. Once it uploads completely to our channel. And I hope you all have had a great July and a great night. Again, go read the story, and I will see you at the end of August, this time on time. Bye, everybody.